Well, today we have an important topic called listening to the Dhamma. I know when you come to the temple and when you listen to Dhamma, you gain a lot of things and all that. But today we're going to talk about why is it necessary to listen to Dhamma and how do we go about listening to Dhamma. Okay? Now, when we listen to Dhamma, there are two things we can we can bear in mind. First is what we call the object. The object down here is, of course, the Dhamma. That is the teaching of the Buddha. Now, the wonderful thing about listening to Dhamma is that each time when you listen to Dhamma, you learn new things. You hear of things which you have never heard before. And the Dhamma is actually the experience, the spiritual experience of the Buddha when he gained enlightenment. And because he became a Buddha, he knew what there is to be known. And he teaches us the truth. And from the practice of the truth, we will find many, many ways in which we can lead a good and happy life. I think the wonderful thing about the Dhamma is that not only can we lead a happy life now in this world, but it also teaches us how we can proceed on to later lives, to future lives. Of course, we must consider ourselves to be very lucky to be able to listen to the Dhamma. I can think of many, many places in which, even if you want to hear the Dhamma, you do not have the opportunity. Even like a place where, the very place which Buddhism has come from, where Buddhism came from, in India. For many centuries, Buddhism was lost from the land in which it comes from. It disappeared. Okay? It began from India, but it disappeared. And only very recently you begin to have Buddhists in India. So even if they want to listen to the Dhamma, they cannot, to the Buddha Dhamma. But there are many places, there are some places where they have not heard of the Buddha. And I know that there are certain places in the West in which people are interested to hear the Dhamma, but not so easy for them to listen to. In fact, somebody was telling me the other day that there was this is a monk whom I met in the temple. He was saying that in England, there was a nun who used to go to the school to teach Christianity, but she was having a lot of trouble because people are not turning up for the classes. Then what happened was the principal decided to ask a monk to give a Dhamma class and asked the students, if any of you like to listen to Buddhism, many of them put up their hands. So later on it seems that Buddhism was very popular down there in the school and it's still continuing in the school. So the people down there do not want to listen to their own religion, they would like to find out what Buddhism has to offer. And Buddhism has, in fact, created a lot of interest in the West. Okay? But the Dhamma is not around all the time. It is only because the Buddha has arisen in this world that we have such a thing called the Dhamma. If the Buddha has not arisen in this world, you don't have the Dhamma. So we're very lucky to be born in a time when the Buddha has come up and his teachings are still with us. So Buddhists always consider listening to the Dhamma a very rare opportunity. Very rare opportunity. Now, subjectively, on the subjective side, we listen to the Dhamma as human beings. And of course, as human beings, sometimes when we listen to the Dhamma, our mind wanders. I know sometimes when we have a kind of a talk, although your eyes might be looking forward, but actually the mind can go in many ways. Mind is so flexible, wandering. Mind go on a tour. Some will look in the ceiling, some will look on the ground to count how many towels there are on the floor and all that. So this is the problem with us. Sometimes our mind wanders a lot. And to be able to listen to the Dhamma, which lasts for about 3/4 of an hour, you need to have quite a well-trained mind, to have good concentration. Many people can only listen to maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at the most. After that, their mind starts wandering. So actually in the sometimes we are also not been taught how to listen properly. You know, sometimes as little kids we say, oh, don't pay attention to him. We're taught not to listen very well to people. And therefore, we have not cultivated the right habits of listening. You know, in the past, when they don't have books to read, people listened a lot. And that is how they learn. That is why you say listening to the, you learn maybe the Dhamma. Those days they listen to the Dhamma to the Guru. And they will sit on the floor, the Guru will sit on a chair. And that way they accumulate knowledge. And their memory is so good. So good that they memorize, one whole dictionary. Can you imagine? For people who learn Pali, they memorize the dictionary first. So they memorize all the words. So early on when they get out, they just recite like that. And so all very good memories. And there are a few people in this world who can memorize the Tripitaka. You know, the Tripitaka is so huge, volumes and volumes, and they can memorize. So, but of course these days we depend a lot on writing. Some of us, we can't even remember our own telephone number because we depend on writing so much, right? But listening, there are three kinds of listening. One is what we call listen. Second is what you call, first is what we call hearing. Second is what you hear, you say listening. And third is what you call hearkening. Hearkening is a bit old-fashioned, like poetry. Hearken, old-fashioned, but it's got a useful meaning down here. Now hearing is what? Hearing is a physical process. Then you got your eardrums, you got a machine down there, you go, so the sound travels through the air and hit your eardrums. So you hear. Now I hope when we come to a Dhamma talk, we are not just merely hearing, because then you hear sound. That's it, you know. What did the speaker say? Don't know. Only hear sound. So that is hearing. You say you hear. You have heard it before. Okay? Now the second level of involvement, which is even better than hearing, is what you call listening. And listening means what? You have some kind of concentration. You concentrate. You listen carefully. Yeah? So listen. They say listen well. Listen to what I say. Listen well. Then the third is, of course, a word which is a bit old-fashioned in the English language, which is called hearken. But this is quite a useful word when we use in relation to Dhamma. It means accept the Dhamma wholeheartedly and with some kind of happiness, to hearken to the Dhamma. So when you listen to the Dhamma, do you hearken? Do you just listen, or are you just merely hearing? So we have to search ourselves when we listen to the Dhamma. Of course, this one is... there are three levels, three ways in which we can get knowledge. Okay? The first way in which we can get knowledge in Pali is called Sutta Maya Panya. This means knowledge which we get by listening carefully. As I mentioned to you, those days things are not written down. You listen to a teacher's words and you remember. Right? And you find that those monks who are trained like that have very good memories. They can just recite offhand, stanzas, just like that. But of course, hearing is one useful way in which we build up knowledge. In fact, most of our working time, when we are awake, one of the ways in which one of the senses we use a lot is hearing. We hear more than we talk. I'm afraid for people who talk more than they hear. Okay? So, hearing, we receive a lot of information, and therefore, one way of getting the Dhamma, of developing our wisdom, is through hearing. But of course, under hearing also you can say reading over. That is one way of... That is just to develop, to understand, to get exposed to the Dhamma. This level. Then the second level is what you call Chintamaya Panya. This means wisdom through thinking and reflecting. So you reflect about the Dhamma. Now that you hear the Dhamma, so you go back and think about it. You reflect, like a mirror, reflecting. You think about it, think deeply about the Dhamma. And then what happens to the Dhamma knowledge? It becomes deeper. It grows deeper and deeper. Then it begins to take root. This is what you call wisdom from thinking. It gets deeper into you. Then there's yet the third level. This is wisdom got through meditation. So when you do meditation, you begin to get knowledge, not from thinking, not from hearing or reading, but that knowledge will arise within you. It will arise within you. You will, for yourself, discover truth. And if you haven't done meditation, it's quite hard to understand what this is like. But if you have done meditation, because a meditation process is to kind of sharpen your mind, in which your mind becomes sharper, becomes more concentrated. And when the mind is more concentrated, things you should take for granted, you begin to see things in a different way. This is understandings, realizations. Of course, there are some people who get realizations by not doing meditation. For instance, one day you have this person sitting under an apple tree, and they saw the apple falling. You know who is that guy, huh? Isaac Newton. Nothing to do, sat under the apple tree, apple fell down. I think if we are like Isaac Newton, we'll probably pick up the apple and eat it up. But then it makes him wonder, he says, what makes the apple fall? And that's how he came to his gravity, law of gravity. But meditation is like that. You know, we develop ourselves, and then you come to certain kind of stages in which the truth will reveal itself before you. And this is not the kind of knowledge you can get through logic. That is why the Dhamma which the Buddha taught is not something which is just through logical reasoning. If the Buddha sat down under the Bodhi tree and said, okay, let me just use logic to teach the Dhamma. That Dhamma tak boleh pakai. Logic. It's not philosophy. Philosophy is you sit down and you think also. It's not. It's a kind of realizations of truth based on his spiritual development. And this is something which we can all discover. So according to Buddhism, within every one of us is this huge mind of wisdom. The truth is standing before our eyes, but we cannot see it. You know how foolish we are. We are all a bit dull. Right in front of us, there is the truth, but we don't see it. But of course, when you do meditation, you begin to understand the truth. You begin to penetrate into truth. So this is the 3 levels of wisdom. So the first is what? Sutta Manya Panya, that is by listening. Second, by thinking. Third, by meditation. And it goes deeper each time. Okay? Now, we want to make a self-evaluation. Where do we stand when we come to Dhamma knowledge? We look at ourselves. First, let us use the example of a Dalit. Dalit means not very smart. A bit dull upstairs. Dalit, of course, we say that he's root of delusion. You know, in his mind, delusion is very strong. And his intelligence is quite limited. He's what you say, wisdom overturned. Like wisdom overturned. Now, this is an example of a Dalit. A Dalit actually is like a kind of a pot. If you got a pot, you turn your pot upside down and there's a Dalit. When the pot is turned upside down, when you pour anything inside, what happens? Masuk ke tak ada? And nothing enters. The whole pot is put upside down. Okay, this is the Dalit. He goes to the temple, of course, he comes to the hall maybe, or he goes before a monk, and he listens to the talk. He listens to the beginning, doesn't pay attention to the beginning, doesn't pay attention to the middle, doesn't pay attention to the end. So he just sits down there, the mind wanders, he says, what shall we have today after the talk is over? Maybe we will go to where? Paksin Grand and do some shopping. I must buy some shoes. Running out of shoes. And maybe our daughter needs some dress. And what shall we eat today for dinner? Last night we had tom yum, but today stomach a bit funny, maybe don't eat so much spices. So the monk or whoever begins, so his mind will be wandering. He never listen to the beginning, never listen to the middle, never listen to the end. This is what you call a Dalit. He might be very smart, by the way. He might be very smart, very sharp-minded. He might even be able to score a few distinctions. But he's a Dalit as far as Dhamma goes. He doesn't pay attention. It's like a pot upside down, the Buddha says. Whatever water is poured in the pot, never remain in the pot, it runs off. So the thing is that Dalit is not able to hearken to the Dhamma. He doesn't hearken to the Dhamma, and he doesn't remember, of course. But of course, sometimes he might be able to pick up some good advice. Sometimes, but And if he is going to make use of the good advice, sometimes it's very useful. It can cure him of his delusion. I will give you an example. Dalit, sometimes it depends on interest. Depends on what interest you have. Some people, even as young people, they're very interested in the Dhamma. I remember that when I was a kid, just using myself as an example, I used to like to go to the temple. Very strange. In fact, Standard 1, I remember I was once brought to the temple. I was so delighted to a Sunday school, but too small at that time, Standard 1, running around. So then after that, my brothers brought me to the temple once. Then they said, too young, cannot. So I had to wait for many years. And by the time I was Standard 4, I was brought to the temple again. And that time I remained, consistently every Sunday I'll be in the temple. And I remember that for service, we used to read lines from the Dhammapada. Now at Standard 4 or Standard 5, when we were reading the Dhammapada, they say, good people are like the snow-capped mountains seen from afar. Evil people are like arrows shot by night. As rain does not get into a well-thatched roof, that means your atap very well made. So evil doesn't get into a well-trained mind. So these are all stanzas from the Dhammapada. And even at Standard 4, Standard 5, I remember all this and says, very good stanzas. So I have a delight, for this kind of things. But some people, of course, even as adults, there's no delight when you listen to Dhamma. So it all depends on what is inside you, whether you have the delight. Now, it seems that during the Buddha's time, there was this rich millionaire by the name of Ananta Pindika. He's got a son, and he wants his son to listen to the Dhamma. Now, he has listened to the Dhamma, and he's benefited. So he's a very strong supporter of the Buddha. But he's got a son, this young man, not interested. He said, please don't send me to the temple. I do not want to go to the temple. So father gave him a kind of an very attractive package. See, you go to the temple, I will give you so much money. Father is rich. And of course, as a young man, since he doesn't have his own source of income, depend on father for pocket money, he said, never mind, I'll go to the temple. So he went to the temple one day, he just sat around and just looked at the floor, count how many leaves there are on the branch, or something like that. Doesn't pay attention. Even he was supposed to sit in the hall to listen to the Buddha preaching, but his mind wanders everywhere. So when we went back, father says, you go to the temple? Yes. You sat in the hall where the Buddha taught? Yes. Okay, here's your money. Happy, Then father said, okay, tomorrow can you go to the temple? Go to the temple again. No, first you go to the temple. Doesn't ask him to listen to the Buddha. Second day, the father says, you go to the temple. I give you bigger sum of money. This time you go to the hall and just listen to the Buddha. And he did that, Went to that station happy, thinking, my father is going to give me money at the end of the day, then we can go to the fair and enjoy with my friends and all that of the money. And then father asked him, did you go to the temple? Did you listen to the Buddha? Yes. Okay, here's your money. And father says, third day, I give you a very big sum of money, but you go to the temple and you try to tell me. Second day, father says, but what did the Buddha say? After giving him the money, what did the Buddha say? He said, I don't know. I just said, I don't know what the Buddha said. So third day, father said, never mind. If you can go to the temple, listen to the Buddha, this time I'll give you a big sum of money. Okay? But you must be able to come back and tell me just one thing what the Buddha taught. Just one central thing what the Buddha taught. So he says that shouldn't be too difficult. So he went and sat in the hall, and the Buddha was preaching. But the Buddha that day preached in such a way, because the Buddha knew what this young man was there, he preached in such a way that this young man just couldn't catch one central idea. So he listened and listened, and as he listened, he used lots of energy. Listen. And finally, when he came to the end, everything fell in place. It's like a kind of a jigsaw puzzle in you. You have little pieces which you don't know what that piece is, so you arrange. And finally, you found the piece and pam, whole thing fell in place. So he listened right up to the end of the lecture, and everything, pam, fell in place. So when he went back, the father said, I've come back to the temple. What did the Buddha teach? So he was able to tell the father what the Buddha taught. Then the father says, here, take this money. He says, no, I don't need your money anymore. He doesn't want the money anymore, because now he's got something which is more valuable than the money. So this is to show that sometimes we can begin as Dalits, but sometimes we can change ourselves when we create that kind of interest. Okay? So I hope there are any Dalits around. second kind, people who go and pay to go to the temple. There are some people who go to the temple very dutifully. They come and put things on the shrine hall and all that, come to the hall and listen to the talk. They listen, to the beginning, middle, and end. But they are like a person who uses a kind of a sarong. Then on the sarong, he sit on the floor, then you put what? Put various kinds of fruits in the sarong and all that. Then when he gets up, what happens to all the fruits and all that? All scattered on the floor. This is what you call a person with scattered wisdom. He goes and listens to the beginning, and people say like this, oh, like this. They say like that, oh, like that, oh. But when he gets up, everything gone. Everything gone. So this is also another problem. Bocho lah. So empty inside. Some people say go in one ear, come out the other one. Come out the other ear. So this is what we call a person like a scattered wisdom. And if you want to use a pot example, it's like what you call a cracked pot. Or pot with got holes, leaking pot. So when you got leaking pot, what happens? You pour liquid, first you see the level down there, then it goes down. Leaking cannot be doing anything. So these are people with scattered wisdom. Then of course you have the other one who, of course this kind of person, again with mind training, with meditation, with mental culture, or with consistent practice, he can actually be able to be not so scatterbrained, not of scattered wisdom. He can have better concentration. Then there is another person who will go to the temple, listen to the Dhamma, pay attention to the Dhamma at the beginning, pay attention to the middle, and pay attention to the end. And when he gets up, he could still remember from the beginning, middle, and end. And this is what you call putting the pot upright. So if the pot is set upright, you can pour various liquids, you can still hold the liquid. Whatever things is being poured in the pot. This is what you call a man of comprehensive wisdom. And of course the Buddha praises this kind of a person. He says a person of well-directed mind, mind which is well-directed, of clarity, to have clear mind. This is something which we value a lot as Buddhists. That's why we advise you not to take drum and liquor. Clarity of mind. And he practices the Dhamma according to the Dhamma. He lives his life according to the Dhamma. This is the kind of person who will be able to gain a lot of success in his practice of the Dhamma. People well-directed mind, clear mind, and practices the Dhamma. These are the people who will succeed in the practice of Dhamma. So there is yet another. Of course, for people like this, they would actually learn a lot when they listen to the Dhamma. It is said that the Buddha has got a very long tongue, because very long tongue doesn't mean physically he's got a long tongue, but actually there is Dhamma everywhere. Now if you have a comprehensive wisdom, you will be able to understand, even from daily things, even like a leaf falling from the tree. The leaf falling from the tree teaches us Dhamma. Then you understand there's impermanence and all that. So there is Dhamma all around us. So when we come to such a stage, we can understand. We have our body, we've got our feelings, we've got our thoughts and all that. These are the kind of things which we have in our mind with us. So if we have a sharp mind, we are able to catch all those things. We are able to observe all those things. And we are able to increase our Dhamma. Then you've got another person whom you say, a person, this is what we call a poison pot, poisonous pot. Now some pots, if you have put poison inside it, it's coated with poison. Say you put what? Sulfuric acid inside, or hydrochloric acid. Then after that, when you pour your acid, then you pour some milk inside or some orange juice inside. And when you drink that one, what happens? Can drink it? Cannot, So that is what you call a poisonous pot. So there are some people who will listen to the Dhamma but not with good intentions. Sometimes they come and listen to the Dhamma but they try to twist the Dhamma. And this is very dangerous. Sometimes they listen to the Dhamma to look for loopholes. What are the kind of loopholes in the Dhamma? It's not very good. Of course, they say, you see, the Dhamma is a very potent thing. Potent is like a medicine, a very good medicine. But because it is potent, you must make sure that you approach the Dhamma in the right way, with a pure heart and with a clear mind. If we approach the Dhamma with a twisted mind, say, I want to listen to the Dhamma, but I want to twist it. Some people, they twist the Dhamma. Then it is what we call a parable of the water snake. You know, water snake can sometimes be very poisonous. You go to the paddy field, sometimes you got a very poisonous water snake. Now, when you catch a snake, which end do you catch a snake? Which part of the body of the snake do you catch? Anybody can tell? The neck? The tail? Or the middle part of the body? Where do you catch? You catch at the head. If you catch at the tail, what happens? Or catch in the middle. The snake turns around and bites it, very poisonous. So you catch at the head, and in that way you can actually control. Now if you have gone to a snake farm, how they extract poison from a cobra, you find that they catch the snake at the head, then prices his mouth and then extract the poison from the teeth. So therefore you must catch a water snake at the head. Otherwise, we might have problems. So in the same way, when we approach the Dhamma, we must approach it with a pure heart. Because if we are crooked and we approach the Dhamma not for the sake of learning to improve ourselves, but for crooked means, then we can bring a lot of harm to ourselves. These days we begin to read the newspapers, you have various people who claim themselves to be monks, but they do all kinds of nonsensical things. Things which the Buddha himself condemned. These are the people who are actually putting themselves in a very dangerous position. And they're causing a lot of harm to themselves. They're catching a water snake at its tail. Very dangerous. So this is what we call the poison pot. Okay? So we can ask ourselves, which pot do we represent? Are we the pot which is upside down? Are we the pot which is cracked? As well, not cracked pot, okay. Some people say cracked pot means a bit off. Leaking pot. Or are we the pot which is set upright? Or are we the pot which is poisonous? Now, there is from a text, this is from a Tibetan text, which says that how should one listen to the Dhamma? Now, it seems that from this text it says when one listens to the Dhamma, one must be like deer listening to the sound of music. When one thinks about the Dhamma, it must be like a person who is shearing sheep, cutting off the wool from a sheep. When one makes Dhamma a living experience, it is like a person getting drunk. When establishes the validity of Dhamma, it must be a yak eating grass. When one possesses the fruit of Dhamma, it must be the sun freed from the clouds. Now I will just elaborate on each of one thing. So the first thing is this, when one listens to the Dhamma, it must be like a deer listening to music. You see, it seems that in India, they believe that deer loves music. And especially the music of the Indian lute or veena. You know the veena is like a pear being chopped into half. Something like a sitar like that, that's a veena. So it seems that when this veena music is being played, the deer will love the music so much that the deer will stand and listen to the music. And even if he's being shot by an arrow, he will not even feel the pain of the arrow, but continue listening to the music. Such is the concentration of the deer when he listens to music. And this is the way we should listen to the Dhamma. I was also told that mouse deer, on the other hand, also loves music. But do you know how they catch mouse deers? If you ask the kampong people, they take pieces of wood and they knock a certain kind of rhythm. They hit a certain kind of rhythm. And mouse deer when they hear the rhythm only, they want to dance. So they will dance and dance and dance and dance and therefore kena tangkap. And there are certain situations in which I heard that they will hit the stick and sometimes this mouse deer cries,
because he doesn't want to be caught, but he cannot help dancing. So he cries, at least begging for you to stop making that sound of music so that he can run away. But because you make the music, he wants to still do his disco dancing. So I do not know, maybe those people who like to go to disco, maybe past life mouse deer. Or maybe the other way, mouse deer are people who love to go dancing in disco. Being enchanted by the music. So when we listen to the Dhamma, it must be like a deer listening to the vineyard. Okay? So, which means a full concentration. Full concentration. Of course, in certain countries, Buddhist countries, they will put their palms together and listen to the Dhamma. Very pious, and they listen very carefully. And the Dhamma, sometimes the monk may speak for hours, and sometimes the monk will speak for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes for the whole night. And people will sit piously and listen, 6, 7 hours at a stretch. They will sit down and listen. They won't fall asleep. This is Buddhist countries. People have so much faith, they listen to the Dhamma. Down here in this country, if you speak for Dhamma too long, people feel tired already, they get bored. And they want to listen to jokes. But sometimes they listen to the jokes so well, sometimes after the end of the talk, you see what the speaker says, he says, I can't remember, but the speaker spoke one nice joke, I can remember the joke. So they remember the jokes and not the message. Susah. Because our mind's very distracted these days. There's too much distractions everywhere. Okay? So when we listen to the Dhamma, it must be like a deer listening to the sound of music. Then the second one is that when we think about the Dhamma, we must be like a man who is what? Shearing sheep. Sheep are very strange creatures. During winter, when it gets cold, wool will start growing very long. But then, as it approaches summer, very hot. It's like putting on a sweater in the sun. So therefore, I think the sheep is very happy if you can cut off the wool. So cutting the wool from the sheep is actually a very skillful job. Your tools must be very sharp. And because the skin of the sheep has a lot of folds, so the person who shears the wool must do it very carefully, otherwise the poor sheep will have cuts everywhere, It's like people learning how to shave for the first time, for the young men and all that, shave. Of course, these days you got the safety blade, no problem, you won't cut yourself. But those days they have to use like the barber knife, and they kind of shave themselves. They don't know how to use that, cuts all over the face. Something like that. Something like that. So shearing the wool, shearing the sheep is a very skillful job. So you need a lot of concentration. So the way when we think about the Dhamma, we also need to have kind of concentration. Because if we don't have concentration, we may come to some false conclusions. And we know that the equivalent of using the wool is very good, because the wool is being used for making warm clothes. Wool is very valuable, especially like the Tibetans, those people who live in the mountains. The wool is something which keeps them very warm. And when they pack up the wool, they put water and all that, it can become felt. And felt is very, very tough. It can be used as a tent, it can be used as a blanket, and it is fire resistant and all that. So very useful. So in the same way, when we listen to Dhamma and when we think about the Dhamma, we need to have concentration. The concentration of a shearer, in order that we can penetrate into the deeper levels of the Dhamma. And of course we need to have effort as well. And we need to have very sharp tools. In our case, what is the sharp tool that we need to have? The sharpness of it? Of the mind. So we need to have the sharpness of the mind. Okay? So when we think about the Dhamma, it's like a person shearing sheep. Okay? The third, when we make the Dhamma a living experience, it must be like a person getting drunk. Now I'm sure when you hear this kind of equivalent, you think it's very strange. Why is like a getting drunk? After all, in Buddhism we say, avoid drugs and liquor. It sounds a bit inappropriate, but sometimes when you see when a person drinks, the drink seems to free them from all the cares and fear, and they lose themselves in that kind of experience. And in the same way, when we start practicing the Dhamma, when we immerse ourselves in the Dhamma frees us from all kinds of trouble. And but of course, unlike liquor, which makes our mind more deluded, in the case of the Dhamma, when you practice the Dhamma, when you make it a living experience, you have more wisdom in your mind. So it's like a person getting drunk. But of course, drinking is a very dangerous thing, as I must say. Some people, when they have a lot of trouble, they want to drink because they think the drinking can wash away all their problems. They want the drink, the liquor to wash away the problems. But the thing is, liquor will never wash away your problems. What do liquor do? Liquor will irrigate your problems, make your problems grow some more. Make it worse, actually. Alright? Then, when we establish the validity of the Dhamma, it must be a yak eating grass. I'm not sure how many of us really know what a yak looks like or what a yak is. A yak is like a buffalo, but it's a lot of... It lives in the Himalayas, and it's a very tough animal. And yak is like a camel. It doesn't have to eat so much, but each time when it has got an opportunity to eat, it eats a lot. It eats a lot of grass. I remember once I was telling my American housemate that there's such an animal called yak. When he heard about it, he laughed, because normally when you say yak means something you don't like. You say, yak, I don't like it. So I said, there's an animal called yak. Then he laughed and I said, what, an animal called yak? And he thought I was joking. He thought I was pulling his leg. That I just simply invent an animal called yak. But yak is an animal in the Himalayas. So the thing is, when we establish the validity of the Dhamma, it is like a yak eating grass hungrily. When you go to the Himalayas, sometimes you don't have grass at all. But when they find a patch of grass, it eats up the grass. So that kind of eagerness to immerse yourself in wisdom, eating the grass. And finally, when a person develops his wisdom, when he gets into deeper and deeper levels of wisdom, when he develops his mind, when he understands, penetrates into the karma and rebirth, when he has complete trust in the words of the Buddha, and when the words of the Buddha became clear to him, he will be what you call entering into the path. And people, like many of us down here, have not entered into the path. So we are what you call putujanas. Putujanas means worldlings. Worldlings means what? That means we can travel from life to life. Worldlings, still bound by the world, bound by the standards of the world, and very much of the world. Worldlings. And as worldlings, sometimes in our wanderings in samsara, we can go high up, sometimes we can go way down. So we must, in our past wandering, have been born in the heavens. So we must have been at one time gods and devas. But in some times during our wandering, we must have been born in the hells or as animals. So we wander in samsara because we have not penetrated into the Dhamma. So for people who have penetrated into the Dhamma, who practices the Dhamma, and who manages to enter into the stream, enters into the stream. This is a stream which will lead people straight to Nibbana. Now there are 4 kinds of stages. First is what you call a Sotapanna. This is the first stream winner. He became a saint, first level. Stream winner. That means he already entered into the stream. And at the very most, he will only have 7 lifetime more. 7 more rebirths before he attains into Nibbana. Once he enters into the imprint of Nibbana is very clear in his mind. So no matter where he is born, in whatever life he is, he will never lose sight of it. Very strong imprint in his mind. The second is what we call the Sakadagami. Sakadagami is a person who will only get reborn once before he attains Nibbana. So it's the second stage. Sakadagami. Only reborn once in this world. And after that,
attain Nibbana, or he will not come back to this world. The third is called an Anagami. He's called a non-returner. An Anagami, when he passes away, will not be born as a human being anymore. He will be born in a pure abode, in a certain state, and after that, from the pure abode, he will attain Nibbana. And the fourth is what you call an Arahant, the pure one, who will not be reborn again, and who attains Nibbana in this life. Okay? So when a person has penetrated into the Dhamma, and has entered into a stream, when he actually sees the fruits of the Dhamma, he's like a sun freed from the clouds. Now, we find that when the sky is very clear, when there are no clouds, when the sun is shining very brightly, everything is clear. Then when you have clouds which covers the rays of the sun, then you begin to have cloudiness, and then the world becomes dark. In the same way, our hindrances, we have a lot of defilements in the mind. Our defilements is like these clouds. So these clouds covers the sun. And our greed, our hatred, our delusion is just like these clouds, which prevents the rays of the sun from reaching the ground. So when a person has penetrated into the Dhamma, and who's got the Dhamma eye, then it is like the sky, the sun being freed from the clouds, so the sun rays can actually shine. And this is how a person who listens to the Dhamma, if you listen to the Dhamma and you practice the Dhamma, this is the way which you can proceed. So these are the equivalents on how we should listen to the Dhamma. When we listen to the Dhamma, we must be like a what? Like a deer listening to music. When you think about the Dhamma, you must be like a man shearing sheep. When you make Dhamma a living experience, you must be like a person who is getting drunk, but not a very good one, I think, because of the connotation. But it must be taken in the other way. When you establish the validity of the Dhamma, it must be like a yak eating grass. When you possess the fruits of Dhamma, it is like a sun freed from the clouds. So this is different levels of listening and practicing the Dhamma. We have been advised that when we listen to the Dhamma, we must listen to the Dhamma carefully. Because the Dhamma teaches us how to give up evil, how to acquire what is good and skillful, and how to take the teaching to heart. How to take the teaching to heart. Therefore, the words of the Dhamma must not be taken too easily. We must not just dismiss the teachings so easily. So we must pay attention. Because remember, we say that it is not so easy to listen to the Dhamma. Some people, like us, we are lucky enough that we are born in a time when the Buddha's teaching is still around. We can still listen to the Dhamma, and through the practice of the teachings, we can still gain spiritual maturity. But even amongst us, some of you might have friends. How many people are in KL? You can just think about it. And in PJ, I think we have got about 1 million or 2 million people in KL, PJ. But how many of the Buddhists really wants to listen to the Dhamma? Actually very few, compared to the people in the temple. So very few. So it's not so easy to listen to the Dhamma. Even sometimes during the Buddha's time. Sometimes during the Buddha's time, people might be born during the time of the Buddha. But unfortunately, they don't have the good fortune to be able to listen to the Dhamma. Sometimes the Buddha might even enter into the same village, into a village, and they are staying in that village, and they do not go and listen to the Buddha. Again, down here, you don't have good karma. Sometimes people go and listen to the
Buddha, but they listen and they don't pay attention. So many things can happen. So we say that the Dhamma is very valuable. So we have to kind of pay attention to the Dhamma. And from these teachings, it can actually help us to understand what is dukkha, what is the cause of dukkha, what is the cessation of dukkha, and the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. So it is with this mind that we should pay attention to the Dhamma. Now the Buddha says the Dhamma is a wonderful thing. The Dhamma is like an ocean. Now when we practice the Dhamma, it is like the ocean bed which deepens slowly. So as we listen to the Dhamma, our knowledge must go deeper. Of course, again, there are so many people who listen to the Dhamma but their knowledge remains stagnant. We have to try to make our understanding of the Dhamma go deeper. Of course, as it goes deeper, it doesn't only mean listening. If you listen, your knowledge will not be very deep. So you will have to think, which is the Cinta Maya Paya. And thinking about the Dhamma itself is not enough in itself. We also need to practice. Because through the practice, then our knowledge will go deeper. Then the Buddha also says another thing about his Dhamma. He says his Dhamma is like the taste of the water, of the ocean. Now the ocean has got one taste. Ocean water has got one taste. What taste is that? Saltishness. So the Dhamma has one taste. What is the taste of the Dhamma? The taste of freedom. And so when we listen to the Dhamma, when we pay attention, when we practice, we will find the way to freedom. We will find the way to freedom. So that is the purpose of the Dhamma, to free us from our sufferings. Okay? So I think with that I shall stop now. I shall end this talk. Now if you have some questions, you can ask. Do you have any questions arising from what I mentioned just now? Some things which are not clear? Yes? Dhamma is Dhamma. Well, actually, the Dhamma is a very big word in Pali. It can mean a lot of things. Down here we are referring to the Buddha Dhamma. Because Dhamma can also be understood as realities. Dhamma, that is realities. But down here we mean that the Buddha Dhamma. Now Buddha Dhamma is something which upholds. Dhamma is something which upholds. So the Buddha Dhamma is something which helps to support us in this world. So that is one way of understanding the Dhamma. Another way of understanding the Dhamma is the Dhamma also embodies the teachings. Sometimes when we say the Dhamma, it refers to the teachings of the Buddha. Teachings of the Blessed One. The words of the Buddha. Now the teachings of the Blessed One is in the Tripitaka, 3 collections. One collection is what we call suttas. Sutras are what we call discourses. Buddha has given many advices to people. That's what you call suttas. Then second is what you call vinaya. Those are rules and discipline for the monks. And the third is what you call abhidhamma. Abhi means higher. So higher dhamma. And that is about a deeper analysis of mind and matter. That is another way of understanding the Dhamma. And the Buddha has given the parable of a raft on how sometimes a person may chop pieces of wood and make a raft because he wants to cross the river. Maybe the bridge have been swept away. So after using the raft and crossing the river, what does he do to the raft? Does he carry the raft on his back and say, since this raft is so good to me, this raft has brought me across the river, so I must carry the raft on the back? He doesn't do that, because it becomes a burden then. So the purpose of the Dhamma is to bring us across the river. Across the river of samsara. Okay, so that is the other way in which we can understand how the Dhamma should be used. Of course, there are many levels of understanding Dhamma. One level of understanding Dhamma is what you listen to the Dhamma, what you heard. And this gives you certain kind of ideas about what truth is. But there is the other kind of Dhamma which I was mentioning earlier in the talk. It's something which arises within ourselves. If we contemplate deeply into things, then we will have realizations. If you do meditation, you have realizations. If you calm down your mind, like chanting and all that, then you will begin to understand more things. Maybe if you use the Dhamma and you start analyzing things around you, when you begin to see things happening before you, how people get into trouble because of so many wrongdoings, how people become successful because they have practiced the Dhamma, then you understand the Dhamma at a much deeper level. And this kind of Dhamma arises from within. So actually, in Buddhism, we say that it is fine, you listen to the Dhamma, you can recite the Dhamma very well. But sometimes the Dhamma might not be very deep. It's like a kind of a scholar. Scholar might know the Dhamma very well, but it doesn't mean that the scholar himself is actually a wise person. He might not be wise. By wise, it means that not only do you have the knowledge, but you also practice the Dhamma as well. And not only do you have wisdom, but you also need compassion as well. So Dhamma covers both the wisdom and compassion. And it is the realizations which comes from within. And in that sense, it is that wisdom is personal. Because different people will see the truth in a different way. Because sometimes the problem of telling truth is that truth is like a very big elephant. And all of us like blind people. And we try to feel different parts of the elephant. We think an elephant looks like the parts which we feel. You feel the elephant on the body, you think that the elephant is like a wall. You feel the elephant by the tail, you think it's like a kind of a piece of a rope. But an elephant doesn't look like a wall or a piece of rope. Huh? So, the thing is when we try to understand the Dhamma with our limited understanding mind, we can only understand it at a certain level. And therefore it is important for us to practice. So when we practice, then we will realize the Dhamma within ourselves. And therefore, the Buddha has shown us some ways, by following the Noble Eightfold Path, you can bring about that realization of the Dhamma. Is that alright? Okay. Do you have some questions you'd like to ask? You can always ask. I can try to answer. I cannot promise to give all answers to your questions to all your answers to all your questions. But I'll try to clear some problems which you might have. Are you still reflecting over what was mentioned today? Thinking about what was mentioned so that we don't have any questions to ask? No questions. Alright, so with that, I would like to wish all of you good health and peace for this new year.